cricketer MS Dhoni is in news, but for wrong reasons this time. Dhoni has topped the list of celebrities who have failed to necessarily comply and do their due diligence with campaigns or advertisements that they signed up for last year. Advertising industry self-regulatory body ASCI said that there has been a steep jump in complaints against celebrities, and many of them are endorsing products or services failing to provide any evidence of due diligence before signing up for the campaign. Now, according to ASCI, Dhoni featured in at least 10 counts of non-compliance, followed by actor-comedian Bhuvan, who has 7 counts of non-compliance to his name. Now, the fiscal year also saw real money gaming industry surpass the education sector to emerge as the most violative sector, so most violations happening from the gaming sector as of last year. On the show, why is advertising body naming these celebrities? What should influencers and advertisers do to ensure due diligence and focus on top misleading advertisements? Joining us at this point in time is Shweta Purandare, who is an advertising compliance expert, also an influencer. With me, my colleague Karthik continues to be in the studio. I want to come to you, Shweta, directly. The reports of celebrities violating advertising rules is not new. You have been at ASCI, you were the former Secretary General. What does it mean for people who are watching these players, watching these influencers, and perhaps, learning a lot from them?
First and foremost, I would like to say that these are all advertisements, and classically it is said that ads are just a hope in a jar. Okay, so in India, for some reason, celebrities are treated like God, and I think it's high time that consumers do realize that these are nothing but actors. They are just lip syncing what their advertisers are, asking them to say. So consumers have to be more aware. Consumers have to make their own judgment calls and not blindly follow what a celebrity is telling them.
Okay. Also joining us is Arvind Mathur, who is the Product and Business Unit Head at mFilterIt. Arvind, in a country like India, and as Shweta pointed out, where you have somebody you look up to, somebody you admire, an actor, a politician, an influencer, a godlike figure, how can there be checks in place to ensure that young gullible people and citizens don't fall for these advertisements? What sort of checks should be made in place? And I'm sure ASCI already has these checks and balance, and I'll get Shweta back on that. But what sort of checks do you think there should be to ensure that citizens are not duped?
I think the responsibility lies at both the ends, at the end of the advertiser itself, the celebrities themselves, and then obviously some bit of information that audiences such as us need to understand that, as rightly pointed out, that these are again mere advertisements. They are not really something that has to be there, right? It's just a script that is being followed. I think technology will play a big role. I think the numbers that you reported, I think a lot of them are actually violations that have been on the digital side, which means while the TV and the print ads have been fairly fine, about 97% compliances have been met, but a lot of leakage has been on the digital side, which means a lot of creatives that go out get churned out quickly, go onto different platforms like Meta, Google, any other social platform. And there is a gap in how these platforms can monitor, check these compliance can be met, right? I think I'll cover this in 3 parts. Talking about guidelines from ASCI, if these guidelines can be understood in a better way by celebrities, because I understand celebrities today will have a process to understand what ASCI says as to what the guidelines are. For example, you can't show any national symbols in your ad, right? You can't have unassisted minors on the TV going as well. You can't have people in uniforms endorsing products, right? Especially military uniforms and similar, right? So these guidelines could be met by automating tools or automating platforms by checking if those creatives actually don't have any kind of violations or not. And then there could be a control mechanism with brands getting an approval, with celebrities getting to understand what these violations are, and then taking a mitigations task on it, right? The other bit is to, I think, to behave a little more responsibly by celebrities and other actors involved, wherein they could really go about putting up a disclaimer that these are ads or this is a paid promotion that we are following into. And I think with a little bit of those checks and balances, a large part of this problem could be mitigated, right? And it's something that we already see as an area where brands are working towards.
Okay.
they are already working in a direction where they have to be compliant. They have to be in compliance, not just with celebrities, but even in scenarios where there are no celebrities involved.
Okay.
Right? So yeah, I think that's technology will play a role there, and a lot of brands are now exploring and diverging into the space.
Okay. Now, we know brands are exploring because that has risen the number of violations, that has led to rising number of violations on digital platforms by influencers specifically, a 803% rise in violation. Shweta, you are an influencer yourself now and you were previously at ASCI. To all influencers out there, and I want to take this question in two parts. Number one, for influencers specifically, small to big, what sort of guidelines are in place to ensure that you are in compliance with advertising rules? That's question number one. Question number two, for people who are watching at large and you know, as I said, gullible citizens, young people who are, especially in the gaming industry, because that's paved education to be the most violative sector and most violations are happening with gaming advertisements. What should they look out for? How to ensure whether the advertisement or campaign that they're seeing is in fact genuine and living up to its promises?
So firstly, I am in a unique position because I started off my career on the side of advertiser, and I was one of the gatekeepers in ensuring that any advertising material that goes out, you know, it is complying as per laws and regulations. Having worked that, then at ASCI, I was on the self-regulatory side, wherein we were looking at complaints coming into ASCI against advertisements. And in that role, I also got to work very closely with the regulator. And that gave me a very good idea about various media and what is the level of control in every media. For example, for television, the ASCII code is binding on broadcasters. So naturally, the level of control is very, very high there, followed by print. But digital is something which is growing very exponentially year on year, and where the regulatory, there are kind of loopholes, and where naturally people want to take advantage of loopholes. Now, fast forward, I have ventured into a new career that as a influencer, and I recently attended a roundtable called out by the Department of Consumer Affairs, where the idea was to have a very fair and frank discussion between some key influencers, influencer management agencies, and ASCII was also part of the roundtable. So the consensus around the table was, yes, everybody wants to follow and self-regulation is the way to go. But it was also pointed out that advertisers many a times do not want to call out the communication which is going out as an advertisement. You know, they want this to be seen as a native organic content. And that's where the problem is currently, because it's not, according to me, I will make a very clear statement. It is not as if influencers or celebrities are not aware of the guidelines or any of the regulations. They are very well aware. Even if they are not aware, if they are working with an influencer agency or any advertiser, advertisers, of course, know everything, you know. So they are doing
so the onus
all
lies
the due
with the
diligence.
advertisers or with the influencers, because in this case, if influencers know and advertisers also know, there shouldn't be a need for violations.
Exactly. So
are you saying that this is done on
putting out
purpose?
the communication? Who's putting out the communication? Who's paying for the communication? Who's getting benefited by participating in this communication? Okay, so it is the advertisers who are putting out the messages, and which is being propagated further by the network of influencers. And now we are not talking about just the film stars or mega celebrities. It is happening at a nano level also, you know, where I see that disclosures are missing. So many a times, and especially digital media, when every village now, every person almost has a smartphone, and they're looking at these TV shows or advertisements, and you know, for them, it is not very clear when they're looking at a Facebook post that whether this is an ad or this is an organic content. So I have a very strong belief that it is the question of will. Okay, so if government is going to say that okay, we will do light touch regulation, but if self-regulatory efforts are not up to the mark, then it's a real question. You know, this ASCII report that you have pointed out is really an eye opener. You know, whether the light touch
Pardon
regulation.
my coming in. I just want to understand from you, When we say that MS Dhoni, and I'm a big fan, so I don't sort of take direct offense, but just because the name pops up, when we say that a name like MS Dhoni has 10 cases of violation and a name like Bhuvan Bam has 7 cases of violation, does this mean that in these cases, these two gentlemen have failed to provide the due diligence to the advertising regulators, or does it mean that they have not done their due diligence? So there's a difference between the two. Maybe they've done their due diligence, but their due diligence has not been presented as evidence.
They have done their due diligence very thoroughly, okay?
They have, or they have not?
They have,
They have. So then where is the issue? Then the issue is about paperwork.
And I'm saying that these two poor gentlemen are very unfortunate that their name has come up, okay? But there are hundreds of others. Okay,
so let's clarify. Let's clarify specifically in their names, since we've got their posters on the wall and we are really, using their names in the slugs. I want to clarify: is this a violation of any code of conduct, or is this maybe lack of presentation of proof of doing due diligence?
In my personal opinion, people are stretching the envelope, okay? Because can you believe that if they are getting...
When you say people, who do you mean? These celebrities are stretching the envelope?
Celebrities and influencers. Because can you imagine, if they are getting compensated in crores, can they not, they can hire a team of, the legal 10-member team who will do the due diligence for them.
So, Arvind, why don't you come in here and tell me, there's a difference between guidelines, rules and law. What are we talking about here? Guidelines may or may not be followed. It's a best practices SOP. Rules, law are slightly different.
So I think in a broad context, it's a mix of both. There are certain rules and there are certain guidelines to abide by, right? And
so when we say that 3/4 of the influencers, stroke celebrities, stroke advertisers are non-compliant, what does that mean? They're not compliant in their paperwork, which is required as per rules laid down by the regulator, or are they not compliant in way of the guidelines issued that it is a good idea to submit the paperwork or evidence about due diligence?
I think the way the due diligence has got conducted is something that's not been satisfactory. So I think what's been highlighted out, as I understood, is that there's been some bit of due diligence that has been done, but that's not done to a level where they've passed those checks. Right?
So, okay, so let me clarify that for ample clarity of our audience here. Is this something that the country should frown upon, or is this something that the country should, or whichever agency, should take penal action against?
I think it's a difficult question to answer, right? But if you really ask me, there'll be certain guidelines for which there should be no exceptions at all, right? For example, if you do anything that's against national interest,
can you take them to court for not following these guidelines? Or no, it's just a guideline, it's a good practice to declare due diligence, and even if you don't, well, you should have, but never mind, carry on.
No, I think you should definitely put some seriousness behind this entire effort that the government has put in. Ultimately, you're protecting consumer interests and rights. So maybe there'll be elements that can be challenged in court, and you should take things to court in certain areas. But you can't be rigid about it, right? They're also celebrities that represent our nation and our country across, right? So probably you'll have to be, this is a delicate question which you need to look at from multiple aspects as to what regulations have been actually challenged really. I think the entire effort behind the ASCI is to protect the customer's interest, right? So that they don't get misguided. And as long as they're able to navigate this through multiple checks and balances in place, there could be healthy coexistence between these different elements. And whether we do it through aiding technology, whether we do it through setting up broader guidelines or standard protocols in place, I think that's something where the industry needs to move towards and getting to answer those questions.
Okay. Just a yes or a no question from Shweta at this point in time. Shweta, what are we looking at? Are we looking at just a list that has come out, or are we looking at some sort of punitive damage action that will be taken for these celebrities?
Yeah, so this is not a yes or no question. So let me just put two
one
lines to that.
One line answer, please.
Yeah. So in this case, the very big difference is ASCI is a self-regulatory body. ASCI cannot enforce certain things on these celebrities, whereas regulator needs to act, because taking to court is another level altogether. But the respective regulators now need to act, because they need to strengthen ASCI's this report findings.
All right, so the regulator needs to act. Self-regulation,
preferred route.
Just a list.
Good to have.
Good to have, good to know.
Good to know, good to have.
And that's
not
that.
a must.
Not a must.
Ends at that.